Hi, everybody. I'd like to introduce Sam Cooper, who's going to talk about empowering your proposal career to harness AI as your competitive advantage. And as you can see, Sam is from Procurement Sciences. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Brenda. I really appreciate that. Yeah, guys, really happy to be here. Excited to work, of course, with the Chesapeake chapter, and always happy to be with APMP. Like Brenda said, we're gonna go in and basically talk about using AI in proposals, right? What we've really seen at Procurement Sciences, and we'll kind of go into who Procurement Science is in just pretty briefly here, so that you guys kind of get the background on who I am and what we do, but. We've really seen at Procurement Sciences that AI has allowed so many proposal writers, proposal managers, and really anyone who's involved in the proposal process to just be so much more competitive, so much more strategic, free up their time, and ultimately it's just been a real game changer for a lot of our customers. Now, Procurement Sciences, of course, we're the team behind Awarded AI, right? And so we have built Awarded AI. We've been around for a couple years now, right? Which sounds like not a super long time, but really AI for proposals specifically is only a couple years old, right? This is all new technology. In that time, we've grown really, really significantly. We support, hundreds of organizations, thousands of contractors. And ultimately, we've really been pursuing the mission of helping our customers to find and win, more business. And so a big part of that, of course, is through proposals. Um, Guys, I want to start us off here with a question. And so I want to pose a little question to the audience. Just out of everyone who's here, how often are you guys currently using AI at any point during the proposal process? I know it's something that a lot of our customers are doing. And so to me, it's kind of second nature. But oftentimes I hear from people who aren't using it at all. So I'm really interested to kind of see, how you guys are using it and see one, okay. Couple daily, four, five, three. So it looks like we have a good mix. You have three, Brian, Susan. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's something that on a limited basis. Yeah. And that's something we hear a lot too, is that people are definitely using AI, but they're doing so, they don't exactly know how to, get the full power out of it. And so that's something that I hope to share with you guys today as well, is just, how we can actually make the most of AI. But that's good. It seems like we have a pretty good kind of mixed bag of folks here today. So just kind of high level agenda, right? We're going to talk about what the proposal landscape looks like today. It's definitely kind of changing, right? It's a little bit in flux, a lot of things happening on the government side with AI and technology. And then I want to talk about what AI can really do for proposal professionals, how we can use it as that competitive advantage, that I talked about. And I want to give you guys some practical steps to get started, some tips and tricks, or just kind of give you some of those foundational building blocks, and we'll kind of talk through that. And of course, we'll talk about some common misconceptions and pitfalls to avoid, and things like that too. Um, so as we get started, the proposal landscape today is definitely changing, right? Not only have proposals always been super complex, right? Compliance and, incorporating different customer knowledge, kind of really trying to hit to the core of what the customer's problem is, present yourself effectively. Proposals are inherently complex, right? Um, but the landscape today is even more complex, right? It's changing really rapidly. AI is a big part of that, right? Overall, the technology is changing, but also the requirements from different customers, whether, we're talking about the government, even we're talking about, commercial proposals,
No question
everything's kind of
about
changing.
what we're talking about.
So everything is changing really rapidly. And I think what we've seen as I talk to people is that teams are expected now to manage more and more of their library of content, all their data, right? And be able to really quickly, kind of with a snap of a fingers, it seems like executives kind of want people to be able to pull back, the best and brightest. And it's hard. It's really difficult to manage, all of that knowledge, all that data, and weave it all together. That's the challenge that we've always faced. And as deadlines get shorter, right, the marketplace gets more and more competitive. This is a real challenge. Um, And of course, some of these key challenges that we see uniquely in the landscape today, like tight deadlines, right? We're seeing in our customers, they're telling us that deadlines are shortening as a result of AI specifically, right? The procurement teams know that, people are using AI, and so now they feel like they can shorten those turnaround times. The same thing, we spoke a little bit to knowledge management, a second ago. Compliance, obviously, kind of an increasing web that we have to navigate there. And of course, as new companies enter the market, competitive intelligence has always been, a challenge that we need to kind of remain on top of. And that research, how do we stay on top of it all, right? Um, so of course, AI adoption is increasing, right? As we talk about this change in the market, right? And also what we see with that, like we spoke on the procurement side, the government and other procurement teams are expecting our proposals to be locked on, laser focused, right? Because the technology's out there. But we also see internally our customers in proposal management or proposal writing, right? They're feeling this pressure from their executives as well to really deliver, at a high level. It needs to be precise, it needs to be accurate, and so there's, a lot of expectations and a lot of, you know, kind of demand on proposal teams, right? And of course, there's always the threat that other companies or other teams who are using technology more effectively could, outcompete us, right? Or we could, introduce risk by failing to adopt. And so really, what this all kind of comes together from my perspective and looks like is that AI is becoming this sort of table stakes tech, right? We're seeing, like I said, huge growth, right? Everyone's using AI, everyone's talking about AI. And so it's really kind of becoming the industry standard practice to use AI in proposals. Some quick notes here, right? Generative AI adoption, one of the fastest, growing adoptions of any technology in history. 40% of U.S. adults in 2 years were using AI. I have a little graph in here later that shows that compared to PCs and the internet, AI is unprecedented in the adoption. Everyone has just taken to it, and for good reason, right? And of course, we've seen a ton of growth, and even on the procurement side, right? With the government, we're seeing, hey, you better use AI. I mean, we go to these industry days, and there was one we were at where there was someone at a high level in the Air Force. I can't remember his rank, but he was speaking basically and saying, hey, look, we're using AI on the government side. If you guys aren't using AI, you're getting left behind, basically, is what he said. And so it really speaks to the evolving nature of this discipline, overall. Um, and so what can we do, right? What can AI do for us and how can we use it? Before we jump in here, guys, I have one more question that I wanted to pose to the group and kind of get your take on. If there was one thing that AI could take off your plate tomorrow, right? What would that be for you guys? I've put a couple examples in here, but feel free to type, right? I'm interested to know kind of what you guys see as some of the biggest areas of opportunity for AI in proposals overall. I know for me and for a lot of the customers, it might be compliance, right? We see compliance, definitely something that's popping up. Yeah, definitely. Looks like a lot of people speaking to four here. Compliance, yep. Yeah, definitely something that we hear all the time. Yeah. Winning response aligned with a win strategy. It's a great use case for AI. Yeah, absolutely. Scanning to see if the opportunity is a good fit for the company. Yeah, that's definitely another one where our customers, find a ton of value also. Well, that makes sense, guys. It definitely makes sense. Developing shells, yeah, compliant, you know, yeah. Quick turnarounds, being able to draft that first pass content. I think, the thing is, there are so many different use cases for AI, not just in proposals, but also just generally that it's kind of hard to know where to start, right? When you get started trying to use AI, it's like, where do I even start with this thing? Um, so, here's the thing. AI isn't something that, we're looking off into the future. I remember the movie, I think it's called I, Robots with Will Smith when I was a kid, and you see all the fancy robots and the crazy stuff. And, science fiction has a funny way of, kind of looping back to reality in the end, right? And they kind of predict things. But ultimately, this isn't something that's super futuristic, right? It's here today and teams are making use of it. And whether it's streamlining research, whether it's accelerating writing, compliance, some of the things you guys talked about. The point is that all those, all that science fiction stuff that's sensationalized, is not exactly how it's shaken out, right? AI's here, it's real, but it's a tool, right? And it's a tool that really is amplified and most effective when it's partnered with human expertise. And that's what we've seen. Super effective is not using AI to replace bodies, right? It just doesn't work. But there are a lot of efficiencies and a lot of power in using AI, especially if you know how to use it and bringing your own expertise into the fold too. One of the great use cases here, guys, that I always like to touch on is research and intel gathering. So there are a number of different AI tools out there that can help us with this. At Procurement Sciences, we have a GovCon specific sort of deep research style tool that we've built, from the ground up, right? That basically is designed to go out and gather, intel on competitors, intel on customers, what's their strategy. And we can come through and even internally do our own research about our own contracts, right? Our own proposals that we've submitted, past performance write-ups. And so centralizing, gathering intel and centralizing it, doing that research really, really quickly, great use case for AI, as long as we feed it the right data and we point it in the direction, that we want it to go. Now, drafting and editing content is one that, in my opinion, and what I've seen with our customers, it's one of the biggest time savers. I mean, writing is something that can. Sorry about that, guys. Writing is something that can take, a really long time. Obviously it's tedious. We've all sat there and, had to bust out pages and pages of writing. And the AI, some people are inclined just to sort of snap their fingers and try to have the AI draft the whole, all of it for them. Other people are really actually very hesitant, understandably so, right, to come in and, the actual quality of the content that the AI generates and have it write for them. And can it write in my style guide? This is one of the biggest hesitations that we see, especially, of course, among proposal managers and proposal writers specifically, because is it really going to write in my style guide? Is it really going to, is it going to be fluffy? Is it going to cut, right to the point? But this is a great use case. Again, we have to know how to do it, right? We have to be empowered by the tools that we're using. And also, we have to bring our experience into the fold too. Now, compliance. I saw a great comment a second ago in the chat about compliance, using AI for proposal compliance. One of the things that the people often point out, and this comment did, is that I just don't trust it for compliance. I don't trust it. And that's why it's really important to have a human in the loop throughout the process, right? We never want to give the AI kind of blind, full control of everything and let it go off and run. Again, it's about using the AI to either catch things that we wouldn't have otherwise caught, or speed us up, or review our content, or write content in our own style guide so that we can review it. We take advantage of those efficiencies, but at the end of the day, we want to have the human in the loop in the process. And that's something that we, definitely prioritize at Procurement Sciences, and something that, really is industry best practice in AI at this point. And that's another reason why anytime people say, "Oh, AI is going to replace me," it's going to take this away, or it's going to start to replace people, especially for us in proposals, it's just nowhere near, that state yet. I mean, it's growing, the technology is advancing, but really right now the phase we're at in AI is, we need to bring our expertise in and really let the AI be a tool for us to use. We also, of course, collaboration, we spoke to a little bit, knowledge management, right? You can come in and, use the AI to help give you feedback from different perspectives. One of the ways I often do that is through proposal evaluator style review. So I have the AI be my evaluator, come back and give me feedback. Knowledge management as well is a great use case where, hey, AI, take a look at all these proposals, summarize them for me. Tell me what organizational structure makes the most sense. How do I put these into a folder structure, that is going to, really make things easy to access and make sense. And so organizing content, curating content, pull out some of the best paragraphs that speak to requirements like this one. So curating that content is a great use case as well. So ultimately, guys, AI, of course, has a ton of different use cases, covered off on a few of them. But how do we actually make it that competitive advantage for us, right? How do we actually put it into play so that, we're really getting the most of what it has to offer? And that's what I want to cover in this section, kind of turning the AI into that competitive advantage. Now, the thing that we need to do is we need to understand AI for what it is, right? A lot of people see AI as a productivity tool, and rightfully so. It's a tool in your tool belt, right? But it needs to kind of shift the way we do things a little bit, right? It gives us a new perspective. It gives us a fundamentally different tool set than we have before, and it really changes things, right? And so the nice thing here is, when the AI can kind of come into your existing workflow, slot in those places where we want to take advantage of the efficiency, that's when it's most powerful, right? We don't want to kind of look at AI as this tool that exists alone in a box that's going to solve all of our problems. Instead, we want to bring the AI, actually into our own workflows and be able to use it, where it's best used, right? Ultimately, not only does it allow us to make smarter decisions, I saw bid no bid kind of decisioning in the chat pop up, right? Great use case. Especially again, if we give it the right data, we give it our strategy. It also allows us, though, to take advantage of those efficiencies. But at the end of the day, what I really love to see is when the AI helps us actually improve the quality of the proposals that we can submit through reviewing and giving us feedback. Again, maybe from the perspective of an evaluator, right? Can come back and give us feedback from all these different perspectives. Now, this is kind of that same thing, right? A good segue into it is how do we enhance productivity and get more, efficiency and kind of increase our proposal throughput for our teams without sacrificing quality? And I think the big thing is, we need to really ground the AI in our company information, right? And there are a lot of things that I hear when I talk to like, procurement officials or people, on the sorry about that, guys. There are a lot of things that I hear when I talk to people, right? Um, on the procurement side about like ChatGPT proposals, right? They're getting this increased volume, of course, right? Because it's so much easier to put a proposal together now of really generic, ChatGPT proposals that basically all look the same, right? They're saying they get 6 responses out of, I don't know, 10 total, and they're all basically exactly the same responses. And so this is something where, it's super important that as you're using AI and as you're implementing it, we want to be able to ground the AI in our company data, right? We want to be able to give it the proposals, give it the examples of our writing style, of our voice, right? We want to be able to guide it with our strategy. What are some win themes? What are some differentiators about us overall? And then also for individual bids, right? So really that's kind of the big thing is if we give the AI the context that it needs, to deliver results to us at a high level, ultimately, we're kind of setting the stage for success, right? And so we really want to make sure that we set the AI up for success, by doing that. Um, Also, one of the things that we see here is that, our customers are able to kind of unlock their data, right? Their company data in a way that they hadn't been able to before. For example, like a capabilities matrix is a good one, right? So there's so much data, and I come from a small IT company, right? Um, there's fragmented past performance that lives all over the place. I think especially for small businesses. And one of the things that the AI can do for us is it kind of brings all that data together in one place and allows us to really kind of have it at our fingertips, right? And so it allows us to unlock some of those insights that, when there's silos of knowledge and you have to be on the phone with, I was always on the phone with our chief strategy officer at my, in a past life. And he's a great guy, wonderful guy, and very thankful to have worked with him, but he's so busy, I'm like, hey, where have we done this before? Do we have any? And so again, that kind of knowledge management, right? But using that ultimately to feed into the AI to make decisions that are backed by, the best data. And that kind of feeds into, pursuit decisions, bid no bid decision making, but even competitive analysis, right? We see that a lot and we see customer priorities shifting really rapidly in this space. How do we stay on top of all that, right? What does that mean to my company? Well, if you have an AI that knows, about your company, about your strategy, right? It can come back and help you guys make smarter decisions. And that's one of the things that we see really kind of as a game changer for a lot of our customers once they kind of get to that level. And that usually comes after some of the quick wins, that they might initially get with drafting content or searching past performance, pulling relevant content, things like that. Um, Now, one of the things that we can do, and I think is pretty important here, and we'll kind of see some of the stats here later in a little chart, but we really want to be able to position ourselves ahead of the market because we see adoption curves, early adopters, and the efficiencies that they're getting, right? They scale exponentially. And so what we've seen is some of our early adopters obviously are positioned better as AI changes, right? People who have been working with AI from its infancy are now more familiar with AI and using it, going forward. And so, um, this transformation is happening continually, right? It's becoming kind of the standard that there's change rather than, something novel. And so, adopting AI, positioning yourself, ahead of the market and trying to be an early adopter is something that we can do right now because nowadays, I've been with procurement scientists for about 18 months. And nowadays, when I talk to someone who's, never really used AI before, I'm kind of like, wow, that's a rarity. But, 18 months ago, it was much more common. And so as time goes on, of course, more and more people are adopting and using AI. The other thing that we see for proposal professionals specifically in this regard is that you guys have the ability to, and really we all do, right? Have the ability to position ourselves as thought leaders in the space because this is something that's evolving, right? It is new technology. And so being an early adopter of AI, coming on and implementing this into your workflows, it's not that it's 100% uncharted territory anymore, but you get to be a part of this community that's changing and really drive and position how this is going to look in the future, which is what we need, right? We need people in the industry actually speaking and working with this every single day. And that's why, of course, at Procurement Sciences, the majority, if not, everyone that you'll talk to comes from government contracting, from proposals, from capture, as we shape the tool. But this thought leadership in the industry is a huge opportunity, I think, for, people across the proposal profession. Um, Okay, guys. So, what are some of the practical steps to actually get started with AI? So my best advice here is to start small, right? We don't want to try and boil the ocean, corporate jargon, but it's a good thing to avoid, right? We don't want to boil the ocean when we come in. We want to start small. We want to focus on those easy wins, and ultimately, what we see are those proposal tasks are really, whether it's building an outline based on the instructions for section L, right? Kind of start a little small there, right? We can do that. Maybe I don't come in and ask the AI to draft me a whole proposal, right out of the gate. We can start small with these pieces that we know the AI is able to do really effectively, really well, repeatably, et cetera, et cetera. And then we kind of get the feel for how the AI works and we can continue. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to bring AI in, and try to overhaul our entire proposal process, change everything, overnight. It's bad news not only for, our team who's going to have to try and juggle all this change and figure out what the new workflow is and we don't want to do that. We want to bring AI in and just slot it in where it makes the most sense. And what we often see is we get those quick wins. The team gets those quick wins, especially, and they start to say, "Hey, this thing's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. Here's how I can use it. Here's how I can use it." And ultimately, those small wins they stack up over time. So, some good examples here, right? Summarizing any content, right? Or just, hey, why don't you give it, attach an RFP and say, hey, tell me about some of the key requirements here. Tell me if it's a good fit for my company, right? That's a great way to start a good conversation with any AI, right, around an RFP. The other thing is, we want to demonstrate the value not only to the organization, but actually to the team too. So, starting small lets us do that. We also want to choose the right use cases, and this kind of goes into that too. But again, giving the AI, kind of the keys to compliance on day one and saying, hey, you're gonna basically manage proposal compliance 100%, and there's no human intervention. It's just bad practice, right? It's not something that, at least at Procurement Sciences, that we would ever recommend, anyone do. But reuse content, like I said, pulling those paragraphs, telling you where you've done things before from your library of proposals, coming in and supporting you throughout reviews. Again, that proposal evaluator kind of review use case is a really great one that I always like to touch on. Research, we've talked about these use cases, but these are some of the ones where, we really want to focus early on. And if we really want to, realize the efficiencies, then we need to start with the right use cases. And it's also good to talk to people in the industry, right? Whether it's, someone at Procurement Sciences. I mean, feel free to reach out to me, guys, anytime you want to, talk about AI and what makes sense and what doesn't. Always happy. I know anyone on the team would be happy to talk to you guys as well. But if you have friends who are using AI, right? You have colleagues, you have people that you worked with at a past company, reach out and talk to them and say, hey, where are you starting with AI? Because just about everyone's using it now. So again, that thought leadership piece kind of comes into play too. Go out and find people on LinkedIn who are talking about this stuff because things are changing so rapidly. It's, important for us to kind of stay ahead of the curve there. Um, and of course, you can see over here on the right-hand side just some of the different, use cases that we support with Awarded AI. Um, Again, we want to integrate the AI kind of into our workflow, right? We don't want to pick up, from the ground. We're saying, hey, we're going to bring on AI. We're going to create this whole new thing, this whole new workflow. What we often see is our customers who come to us, whether they're small businesses, whether they're, top 10 integrators, they have proven processes, whether it's, stuff that's grounded in Shipley, whether it's, stuff that they've developed internally, whether it's stuff that's grounded in, Lowfeld methodology, whether it's a mix of everything, right? What we see is that there are processes that are proven. It's our secret sauce, right? And the AI should never, replace your secret sauce. In fact, what we want to do is really give the AI our secret sauce, let the AI kind of come into our workflow, speed us up, right, and help us out, but teach the AI your workflow. Teach the AI what makes your processes special and what makes your business special. And that's where, we're going to start to see the AI really kind of come into fold, right, come into its own, is when we integrate it into, our workflow. And we definitely don't want to, I kind of touched on earlier, but we definitely don't want to treat the AI as kind of this tool that's off to the side, right? And we use kind of like a chat GPT, over to the side and you just kind of chat with it and it's not really integrated in your workflow because that's not going to give us, the efficiency that an actual integrated tool will. Um, but definitely incorporating AI drafted content. One of my favorite use cases, actually, and this was a new term to me, funny enough, was Blue Team, right? The deeply annotated outline. So not just a requirements driven outline, but taking it, one step beyond and going through and actually annotating an outline with, the verbatim PWS requirement in each section that we're responding to. And we want to include, past performance citations and metrics and things. And the AI is really good at that, right? So we start with an L compliant outline, come in, and now we can build a deeply annotated outline. So that's a really great example of how the AI kind of fit into someone's workflow. That's what they were doing anyway, and they just said, well, hey, the AI can come in and help me do this a lot faster. But still in their format, still with all those little annotations that they wanted to see, right? Make the AI kind of mold to your own workflow is what I hope to get across. Um, and of course, it should be natural, right? You shouldn't want to force AI into your workflows. Now, one of the biggest things that we see too is, we really want to invest in our skill sets, not only for the benefit of our company, right? We want to have that efficiency. We want to, maximize revenue. And, there are tons of ways, and AI, it's very well documented the way that AI can do that if implemented, effectively. But for our own sake, and this is what I always like to say, is for our own sake as proposal managers, as proposal writers, we really want to invest in our AI skill set because at the end of the day, it makes our life a lot easier. It's less time that we have to spend on those trivial, menial, kind of tasks that take up so much of our time when we would really rather be focusing on bigger picture strategy, some of the things that are actually going to drive, the bid forward, drive our success. And so investing in your own AI skill set is really important. And at Procurement Sciences, we support our customers by we do twice daily training webinars. We have a certification program. We're really, really dedicated, and we feel like it's really important in any industry to actually, invest in ourselves and continue to upskill, not only for our own benefit, for the benefit of our company, but the technology changes so quickly too, right? Um, and so again, thought leadership. I mean, we want to be leaders in this space, and everything's changing, so we want to stay on top of it. But some of the things you can do, you can position yourself as that go-to AI champion on your team, right? We've seen a ton of proposal managers, be really effective at this. They come in, I'm the AI guy, and they're going to use AI. They're going to champion AI implementation for the rest of their team. Call me if you need anything. If I don't know it, I'll figure it out. And just make sure that you're aware of kind of how things are evolving, right? What are best practices? Because everything's changing, right? Like we've talked about. Um, So, guys, what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about overcoming some of the common misconceptions and concerns, right? And I chose to end here because obviously, we talk about AI, there are a ton of questions that people have, right? And I see some questions in the chat, right? So hopefully we can address them here in this section. And if not, of course, happy to answer any questions and looking forward to answering any questions after the presentation too. Um, but I want to talk about some of the common misconceptions and the common, things that we hear, some of the hesitancies and some of the different things that we hear all the time. So this is probably the first and foremost one that people come into, their journey of exploring AI and they're not quite sure about it. And one of the things that people are worried about is that, well, hey, the market's changing, and hey, this is going to replace proposal managers. And it's just not the case, right? It amplifies your ability as a proposal manager or as a proposal writer to do so much more in a shorter amount of time and maybe save you some long nights, some long weekends. But, AI can't replace your expertise. This is the thing I always say is, if we think of AI like sort of a junior intern, right, which we should, it's a good analogy for it, or maybe like a junior proposal writer, whatever. Um, Through that lens, the AI doesn't know in and of itself the best practices that you've gained from years of experience in the field, right? The AI doesn't know, exactly the wording that the customer wants to hear because you bid on this, the past three cycles, right? That it came up for recompete. The AI doesn't have these details. It doesn't have your expertise, and so there's no way, that it can, um, eliminate people or replace people at this point. I mean, it's just not there, and I don't think it ever will truly get to that point. Of course the technology is going to keep evolving, but at the end of the day, the experience that we bring to the table as people is so important today and forever, right, in terms of being effective with the AI. And so again, the idea is we want to use the AI to take on those repetitive kind of low value tasks, right? We can focus on strategy. We can focus on incorporating those years of experience, right? And ultimately, the role of the proposal manager kind of orchestrating all these projects actually becomes even more important because we need to be there as that last line of defense to say, hey, this is really coming across how we want it to, or maybe we're hitting on something, that's a little different. And so, it does shift the way that people work a little bit, but ultimately, it's not replacing people now, and it's not going to ever, I think, fully replace proposal managers. Um, Now, this is another myth, and I see some people hitting on this in the chat, and I'm glad. The myth is that, AI outputs, we can just trust them. We don't need to review them. There's systems out there that, the AI is going to give us exactly, what we need in a snap, just like that. And the AI is really powerful, right? It can bring in a lot of data. You've heard me say a few times throughout the slides now, throughout the presentation, that the AI does a really great job of that if we give it the right data, right? If we, make sure that we know how to use it, if we implement it correctly. And so, this is one of these things, right? We always want to review AI outputs. We always want to have a human in the loop throughout, anything that we do. When you start to take the human out of the loop, that's always cause for concern for me, right? With any AI solution that's out there, any AI, not just for proposals, I mean generally any AI tool, right, that seeks to, take the human out of the process, it's always cause for concern because you want to have a human in the loop to review these outputs because as anyone who's gone to ChatGPT knows, right, the AI can do a really convincing job, right, if it's not if there's no oversight of making something up that looks really, really, legitimate, that looks really official. And it's really easy to let that slip right past if you don't know. Um, so the thing is here, when we use the AI, to get to that first draft, right? When we use the AI to help us review, right? We're really always thinking, hey, human in the loop here. We want to be able to review this. We want to be able to use the AI as a tool to speed us up, right? And give it access to the data that it needs, ultimately, feeding back to us as the human. And we're kind of the driver of the process, right? And that's how we see it most effective. Um, Especially, what we see all the time is people might go to ChatGPT, try to, write content, and they say, "Oh, this is, it's fluffy, it's not good," right? And that's exactly why it's so important to have a tool that, implements AI effectively, right? Be backed by a strong team, have your AI grounded in the data that you want it to look at, right? Grounded in your company information, and also keep the human in the loop for the review. So always like to just address that because I think it's a huge concern and something that we do need to be aware of. Um, this is one too. Using AI is risky. It's non-compliant, right? We have seen in the past some requirements, right, that might come out and say, "Hey, don't use AI." Or more common, we saw, particularly in the last administration, we would see, "Let us know, if you've used AI. How have you used AI?" I think, when we talk to people on the gov side, what we ultimately hear is that it's really hard to kind of quantify or define what AI is, right? And so it's like, do you want me to use Grammarly? Do you want me to use spell check? Because all those are AI at the end of the day. And so, did you use AI is kind of an interesting question. But also, I would just echo back here that, when we do go to industry days, when we do talk to people on the procurement side, the message is very AI positive, right? And they're really appreciative of people like us who are supporting industry and using AI, or just in the use of AI in general. What they don't like is, when they get 6 proposals that all came straight out of ChatGPT that are exactly, the same as each other, right? That are clearly not differentiated. The companies just went in and said, "Hey, write me a proposal in response to this," and just submit it. And you never want to do that, obviously, and that's not something that is really an effective or responsible, use of AI. And there's always going to be people out there, who might use tools like ChatGPT. But, if we really want to implement AI in a way that's not only responsible, but also effective, and gives us the ability to, go through and actually write better proposals and get those efficiency gains without sacrificing quality, we need to probably look to different tooling, right, to do that, or at least just be responsible in the way that we use tools like ChatGPT. Um, One thing that we do want to be aware of, though, guys, and one thing that I will say is, when we use AI, especially if we're using tools like ChatGPT, those open kind of tools, um, compliance, especially around CUI. I mean, I'm sure everyone's, CMMC, controlled and classified data. There are some big concerns there that I would have, if it was my business, around putting any of that stuff into like a ChatGPT or anything like that. Not only because it's just not compliant, right, but also because there have been lawsuits now where ChatGPT, well, you can just Google, and pull up someone's ChatGPT session, or, the court subpoenaed ChatGPT and they dumped thousands of, chat histories from different people, basically into the public. And so that's something that, whether you're thinking from a controlled information perspective, CUI, et cetera, or you're thinking from the perspective of, government or company sensitive, competitive sensitive information about our company, you want to be really careful there. And that's another reason why it's important to, again, look at tools that are built specifically for the purpose. Look at tools that are, providing compliant solutions, providing solutions that, you can be sure your information is not going to be out there, right, to the public, whether it's, again, government controlled information or, information about your own company. Um, Now, another one, guys, here is that everyone else is already ahead. So this is that adoption curve that I wanted to show you guys. You'll see over here that top line, that's early adopters, right? People who got in right at the beginning of AI, right? And it's just exponential the way it grows, right? The way the efficiency, the productivity grows. It's just exponential. And you can see as people get in later, right? The curve follows. And the thing is, AI is so powerful that you can't just kind of throw your hands up and say, "Oh, everyone else is already ahead." I mean, we need to, this is something that we're going to have to do as an industry, right? Is look at AI. It's, again, becoming kind of table stakes. So we need to look at it and say, okay, how do we, get where we need to go? And the good news is, if we do it right, if we, go through and implement AI in a way that's effective, that's responsible, with a, good team backing it, really, really quickly, we can get on par with, some other teams who have been using it for a long time. Um, you know, a lot of organizations, a lot of people are experimenting, with AI. But, not a lot of people have fully integrated. I mean, I think there are hundreds of thousands, 300,000 or some, organizations out there, just government contractors, right? So from a proposal perspective, you got to think there are so many companies out there that not everyone has fully implemented yet. And, really the stage we're at with technology right now is a good one because, the models and AI overall has gotten really, really good. even where it was 6 months ago, right? It's gotten really, really good, and it's only getting better. So it's, the best time maybe was yesterday, right? But the second best time is today. And that's what I always like to say. And again, early adopters, and if you got in today, right, maybe 30 years from now, you're an early adopter. Early adopters have the opportunity to actually come out and lead the conversation, right? Shape what best practices are going to be, find what works well, what doesn't work well, what needs to change from a technology perspective. And, it's a good opportunity for us to get ahead of something that's really, kind of transforming the industry. Um, so here's some risks and warnings when we use AI, guys, right? And we've already kind of flirted with a couple of these and touched on them. But data privacy, right? We definitely want to comply with all of the requirements. I mean, around CUI, controlled information, FCI, right? Federal contract information. Certainly, if we're doing anything secret, classified, we need to be off network, right? And there are specific requirements, and that's something that really needs to be top of mind for us. Um, Company policies and internal guidelines can be super helpful as well. We've actually helped a lot of our customers shape their own internal AI policy, which has been really cool to be a part of. But just defining as an organization, taking a step back and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do this, right, is a really great place to start. Again, AI is kind of knocking at the door. So if we take a step back and say, okay, it's coming, we know it's coming, here's how we're going to do this. This is our policy, right? Um, Accuracy of data and hallucination, right? We always want to verify AI outputs carefully, really carefully. And, one of the ways that I love to do that, and this is maybe a little more down in the weeds, and I've tried to keep this talk so far, a little higher level. I work with AI every day, um, maybe a little down in the weeds, but one thing that I love to do that you guys can, experiment with as you play around with AI, ask it to give you citations and then check the citations that it gives you. So, go ahead and build me this report on, competitor XYZ. Give me citations of the source material as hyperlinks within the response, right? Inline citations or in-text citations, however you want to phrase it. What you'll get back, the AI, can give you those hyperlinks, right? But what you'll find is on a tool like ChatGPT, oftentimes you'll see those citations, you'll click on it, and it might be a broken link, it might be a hallucinated link, right? And so again, we really want to verify the outputs. We want to understand exactly where the source data is coming from. And again, if we have access to a tool where we can actually, put together a database and attach past proposals and let the AI kind of learn from our language, our capabilities, right? Obviously, that tool is going to be able to cite those sources directly, internal sources, and give us a better result at the end of the day. Bias limitations, right? There are areas where some AI models have they're really constrained in terms of what they'll say if you ask them about certain topics. Some other AI models are wide open in terms of what you can ask them, and so it's important to kind of understand which model you're working with, kind of what you're asking about, what's coming up, but recognize that there could be some bias, not only kind of in the traditional way that you would think about bias, but also from a data perspective, right? These things are trained on so much data, right, on the back end. And, maybe there's other data that they're not trained on. And so, we have to be cautious of what it actually knows and what it might not know and how that might, color its responses. Of course, we want to be ethical. We want to be responsible. Obviously, we've kind of talked about that, and feasibility is one that we've talked about too. Is just make sure that the use cases that we're starting with are realistic, they're focused, and they're feasible. They can really create measurable impact for us, and we don't want to boil the ocean on day one. So we always want to follow some of those best practices. Like I said, reach out to me, guys. Feel free. Reach out to anyone at Procurement Sciences. We'd be happy to walk you through some of those best practices. Walk you through kind of what makes the most sense when you're bringing AI on. Um, and guys, a couple key takeaways here, just at the end, that I wanted to throw in. So, proposal work and the proposal discipline is evolving. AI is changing things. The government is kind of everything's changing, right? And AI really is something that we need to be aware of, right? It helps us manage all the complexity. It helps us get those efficiencies. And it ultimately can improve the quality of the proposals that we put out there if we use it right. And as proposal managers, really, if we adopt AI today, we can position ourselves to be leaders tomorrow. And so we can lead the conversation and we can shape what this looks like in the future. And I think that's a really unique opportunity, right? I've been super lucky to be a part of it at Procurement Sciences. And I think all of our customers would say the same, which is, you know, there's probably not going to be another chance in our lifetime of something so radical such radical change to come out and give us the chance to shape this moving forward, right? And so it's really, really a cool thing to be a part of, and I would encourage everyone to kind of think about it from that perspective. Um, and so, of course, we don't want to use AI to replace us. We want to empower, our teams with it. Um, what I would say for you guys, experiment, right? Play around with AI, start small. Like I said, a good place to start is, give it the instructions from an RFP, even in ChatGPT, as long as it's not CUI or anything, give it the instructions and just play around with it. Maybe use a dummy one that you guys responded to, a year ago, and give it the instructions and say, hey, build me an outline that's compliant with these instructions. Simple. The AI will come back and you'll kind of see it'll do a really good job of it, but it'll come back and you'll be able to see, oh, it did this, interesting. And you can say, why did you do it this way? Start to interrogate and experiment with the AI. That's definitely something that, I always like to advise people to do. Um, Definitely integrate it into your workflow, right? We want to make sure that the AI is working as a part of your workflow alongside you rather than, kind of off to a box over on the side or trying to replace people, right? And then just champion it, lead it, right? Make sure that, if you guys are looking to bring on AI for yourself, for your team, right? Go into it with the mindset that you are kind of blazing a path, right? You're a part of something that's still relatively new technology, right? And we can shape the future. And so champion that across your team and be that person who, can answer questions about AI, be that person who can talk about it, in a real way, answer the questions that people have and help people find the value in it. Because if you position yourself as a leader, that's going to position you as a leader moving forward. Um, there's obviously a career implication for this, right? We start to see, proposal manager, AI certified job postings. We start to see, AI certified, or AI expert proposal manager, even just AI proposal manager. We start to see these job titles kind of popping up. Um, and so this is something that we're already seeing, and it's one of the reasons why at Procurement Sciences we've brought about a certification program, where we certify our customers on AI and on our platform. But in general, whether you want to go for a formal certification or not, positioning yourself as a leader in that space is important and can certainly have, career implications moving forward. The skill set that you guys, build, it says it here, right? The skill set you develop today is tomorrow's competitive advantage. And we've already seen that, kind of in practice. Um, I think, guys, some of the things I always like to leave with just a couple predictions and trends, and then we'll kind of bounce out to questions here. Um, but I think AI is already sort of becoming table stakes. It's going to continue, right, to move into that kind of baseline requirement category. Um, what we've also seen is that there are legacy tools for proposal management and other solutions really across the market that are sort of rebranding and putting AI in their name, but they're not really AI first. And they're not going to be able to keep up with tools that are AI first, and um, there's also going to be increased investment, probably broadly, in workforce literacy around AI, because ultimately today we have the opportunity to get ahead of it. In a couple years we might be sort of behind the curve, right? And we're going to need to catch people up. Um, right now what we see too is that the technology, like I talked about, it's advancing really rapidly and it's gotten really good, but it's still in its infancy. I mean, we have so far to go, right? um, from the perspective of technology, and there's a lot of hype out there, around AI and different things, but the reality is that there's a lot of things that AI can do really, really well and really, really repeatably that are game changers, but we're still definitely in the infancy of it. um, and I think, ultimately things are going to continue to change, right? AI is going to continue to drive, new roles, new job opportunities, right? New spots in the market that people can attack. And, eventually we're going to get to that point where the AI can actually take on those expert level tasks, right? And so, we're excited to kind of see how the technology continues to evolve. And I know I am. Um, Last thing I'll leave you with, guys, before we turn it over to questions, is just a quote that I found from Steve Jobs that I thought was pretty applicable here and was compelling. Steve Jobs said the doers are the major thinkers, right? And why I think this makes sense is because the people who are down in the weeds actually doing this work every day, we're really the ones who are shaping, the what the future looks like, right? We're shaping the way that this is going to change and what best practices are. And so I think, we have the opportunity right now to take on that role and really transform the way that things are done. And so um everyone who's using AI, kind of pat on the back to you, right? You guys are out there shaping a lot of change right now. And I'm happy to be a part of that, and I hope that everyone else who is a little less a little more weary, maybe a little less comfortable with AI, just embraces that mantra. Hey, let's be a shaper of this industry. Let's be a thinker at the end of the day. um Guys, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn here. My cell phone's here too. Maybe don't abuse it. I'm sure my wife wouldn't love me getting calls late at night, but feel free to reach out. If you guys have any questions or if you need anything after the presentation today, and if you're interested at all in learning more about procurement sciences and what we do, of course, the QR code's there for you guys. Schedule a meeting with us and we can talk there. But I'd love to address some questions because I saw some
Well,
pretty good ones.
Sam,
Oh, Brenda,
before
go
we
ahead.
start that, yeah, I'm going to start looking at, and because we only have about 10 more minutes left. So while I start to sift through the questions, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What are the top three skills concerning AI that every proposal professional should have?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think, the nice part about AI is that, especially for in proposals, we're already linguistic in nature, right? We're focused around language. And so prompt engineering is probably the first one that I would call out. Just being able to talk to the AI. And it's really a lot easier than most people think. I actually gave a whole webinar on it a couple weeks ago, but um, being able to talk to the AI is probably the number one skill. And thankfully we're well positioned for that as people who, work with words. Another one that I would probably highlight is knowledge management. We have to start thinking from the perspective of how does my data feed into the AI? How are things organized, right? And just getting to know your content and understanding how to organize that in a great way. And then I think the last one is maybe less of a skill, but really just kind of that spirit of innovation, right? If you have that kind of mindset, you want to lead the industry and you want to be a part of something special. I've seen that go a long way too.
Here, a question here. How would you recommend developing specific prompts that create images, graphics based on concepts relative to the solicitation?
That's a super good one. So and actually you guys I'm sure saw throughout the presentation a lot of the images and things that I popped in there were AI generated. I love it. I think it's so much fun. What I do is we have, of course, our marketing team. They give us our brand guide that has hex codes for the colors and things. And so I'll start with that. I just say, hey, use the following hex codes only. And then I'll say something like, take a look at the solicitation and give me 5 creative ideas for graphics, right, that we might want to use in our proposal. Or maybe we have a proposal section even, right? And we say, hey, we know we can fit a graphic in here somewhere, and have the AI kind of brainstorm a little bit for you too, especially when it comes to graphics. I think that's a great use case.
All right, here's the next question. This is from Chris. Can you mitigate through iterative queries, plural, and contextualized prompting?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can do through what's called iterative prompting, which is essentially, I'm going to ask the AI to do something. It's going to give me back a result. And then I'm going to tell the AI, hey, yeah, I like this. It's okay, but I was really hoping you'd focus more on this. And you iterate right throughout that cycle. And so I think that's actually a super important kind of a part of prompt engineering and part of interacting with the AI. But a lot of times people, might go to ChatGPT, they ask a question, they get back the result, and they're like, "Oh, this is terrible," and it is, right? So that's where, iterating with the AI and telling the AI, giving it your feedback is super important, especially in a tool that's not super grounded in your company data. It doesn't really, it's not industry specific. Iterating on those responses can be super impactful.
Thank you. And some people just put in comments, correct, Sam. Here, a CEO told me they can easily spot AI generated content. It lacks content and is not too differentiating. What would you say to users who are generating this type of content or to proposal managers who have to review this type of content? Any type of tips you might give them?
100%. I think, this is something we hear all the time, right? Is like I was talking about when we go to industry days and we talk to people on the gov side, it's like, hey, I got 6 proposals out of the 10 total that I got, and they were all exactly the same, right? And so that's a result of people going out and just, using like a chat GPT without, really giving it the context that it needs. What I would say for anyone who's using AI, I think, the point a second ago about iteration is super important. And also, we need to look at it through the lens not of replacing us or doing work for us, but working with us, right? And that's the big thing is I'm the human, I'm writing this section, but the AI is going to help me out with some of the tedious work, that I don't necessarily want to pick up on. And when you frame it that way and you think of it as this is mine, you put your name on it, you kind of sign in a check when you send that over to the PM for review. And if you have to review it and someone's sending you bad content, I would approach it exactly the same as, if one of your writers was sending you bad content, before AI is just, hey, how can we improve this? Let's go back and take a look at it and maybe refresh some skills and some best practices.
And one other, I guess it was back, Peter had a question here about, I think you already touched on it, but how and when do you assure that the content retrieved from AI is authentic or verifiable or it's not hallucinating? If you want to touch on that point just one more time.
100%. Yeah, no, it's a huge concern. It's something that, I mean, there's a couple different ways that you could approach this, right? Obviously, if you're using a tool that's designed to be a little more focused on the specific use case, that's probably baked into the tool a little bit, right? But again, if you're using like an open source kind of open AI tool, um, basically the best way that I've found is number one, tell the AI right up front, hey, I don't want you to make anything up. I don't want you to be strategic. I don't want you to, help me color my response. I want you to stick to the facts. You can just say that to the AI. And then also asking for those inline citations, where did you actually get this? Where are you pulling this from? That can be, super helpful because it kind of holds the AI, hey, if I'm going to write this sentence, I need to back it up with a citation. And so that's something that can be helpful too, as far as that. But yeah, I think ultimately just tell the AI you don't want it to make anything up. That's kind of the best you can do in like a chat GPT, unfortunately.
Well, we'd like to thank Sam today. Thank you so much. You did a great job today. And once again, this presentation will be, everyone's giving you applause, will be back up on YouTube soon, probably within the next 24 hours. And remember, we have APMP Foundation class on September 18th is our next, and just go ahead and look at chesapeakeapmp.org for information about all of our programs. Once again, thank you so much, Sam, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.